people do deals with people they know, like, and trust. And I think it's a huge mistake to just invest in the digital world and forget, like, hey, there's a real world out here where we're actually still building things. We're, getting to know each other and building that one-on-one relationship.
Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible.
All right. On this episode, we have someone that I'm super stoked to chat with. I think this will be an incredibly valuable episode for anyone who's not only trying to get into boutique hotels or commercial real estate, but building something meaningful and beautiful. So we have on the show my man, Zeke Freeman. Zeke is the founder and CEO of Root Architecture and Development. They're a Colorado-based firm that specializes in boutique hotels and high-end design. And they're also working on a project that I'm legitimately planning to stay in once it's ready, which is the Red Hotel. It's a 22-unit boutique hotel, and it's right across the street from the iconic Red Rocks Amphitheatre. A good friend of mine, one of my best friends, he's a band manager for a band that just headlined over there like 6 months ago, and I wasn't able to make it. So I told them the next time they hit that spot, I'm going to go, because that amphitheater has been on my bucket list for a very long time. So when I do, I'm going to stay at your hotel, bro. Zeke's been in the game for over 2 decades, and he's been transforming spaces that inspire and drive profitability. So, Zeke, thanks for being on the show. I'm super stoked to dive in.
Gideon, so glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot, I have to have this in the intro, and we'll close out with it too. You have a podcast called Radical Hospitality that I'm scheduled to be on tomorrow. So anybody who's listening to this, be sure to check that one out as well.
Yeah. We've been diving into a lot of good conversations around hospitality and development. So definitely looking forward to diving into some of the work that you're doing as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm pumped to chat about it. So Zeke, let's dive straight in. So how did you come across this Red Hotel, and how did you end up tying it up and laying out the development? Because it's a ground up development, right?
Yeah, it's a ground up. It's actually our backyard. Red Rocks is, like you mentioned, it's an iconic location, but it sits kind of quietly tucked into the mountains. And we have people come all over the world to come and see their favorite band and venue. And it's a really amazing experience that you're, tucked up into the hill and you can see the dimmer lights beyond. And Morrison is just this quiet, sleepy little town that sits below Red Rocks. Our office and home is just around the corner. We're up close to Evergreen, and we've watched this, crowds come in and out for years. And really, there's not a great place for people to come and stay. And so, we've had it in the back of our mind to find and build a location that, people could not only, come in and, experience an amazing concert venue, but have a opportunity to really experience the foothills. And we're going to give them an incredible experience at the Red Hotel. So, so that was, kind of the genesis. We also run an architecture firm and have been helping people in the foothills build boutique hotels and, their dream homes and projects for since 2012. So like 13 years. And I've been doing architecture in the area for almost 20. And so we really see this as like the gateway and front porch to be able to help our clients, help people come and visit, and, kind of combine a couple of our passions.
That's awesome. And I think I also recall you mentioning this is the only hotel that was approved for development in the market or something, right?
So it's been a long path to get it to an approval. So there's a reason no other hotels have come in. Morrison is this historic kind of sleepy town. Has a couple of great little restaurants, a cool vibe, but they have not done any new development in almost 30 years. And the people who live there, rightfully so, love it the way that it is, but getting new development approved is difficult in this town. So we're the third hotel group to try to get a hotel passed. Most people kind of came in with like, here's our idea, and just kind of pushed it in, and most of the town told them to get out. So we took a little bit slower path. We did a lot of one-on-ones, coffee meetings, beer meetings, held neighborhood meetings. We presented designs and took feedback from the city. And it was a long iterative process. It took about 2 years to get the entitlements done on the project. And so, when they approved, finally got to a place where, the city planning was happy with it. And it's a public process. And so we got approval through planning and zoning and the board of trustees. But as part of that approval, this will be 2.5 stories. It still fits within the character of the town, but it'll be a little bit larger than most of the main street. And, as part of their approval, they also put a moratorium on additional hotel developments. And so ours will be in. They gave approval for one other, and there's no short-term rentals allowed in the city of Morrison. And so you've kind of got like this built-in, moat, which is great from an investor standpoint, to be able to, offer this. So yeah, we're excited. I think that will, we're going to try to create the best experience for people to come in.
What made you feel like it would be different with you? So I assume that you bought the dirt with plans of this being approved, but you had seen all these other rejections. You saw how tight the regulations were. What made you think that you would be the only one who could actually get approval?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know if we'd be the only ones, but this is our backyard and we are part of the community. My wife's a firefighter. We've been involved in the community for 15 years. We got kids in the high school. We run small businesses here. And, we run a really great architecture firm that's focused on hospitality. And so we put the project under contract. The previous owner had another group come in, lock it up. It fell through. And we just built a really good relationship with the owners that were selling this lot and said, look, we can help you get what you want for your property, but we would need to take it through a site development plan process and get approval on that. And if you're willing to work with us a little bit, we'll walk it through that process. In the worst case scenario, you'll have, great design ideas for your project. And so we hoped that was going to be like a 6-month process. And, it went on and on and on, and we got extensions and they worked with us, to help, get it there. They actually wrote letters. They got pretty excited about the project in support. And so one was just, hey, this is our backyard. We're not a big developer group coming in and trying to push an idea. Two, we're uniquely experienced in this space. And then 3, we had developed our own kind of unique stay in this area as well. During COVID, my wife and I bought a piece of property and we built out like this really cool, unique tree house. And that was our kind of first venture in personally owning a short-term rental and doing hospitality. And what we saw was, there was a huge demand because it's so difficult to do short-term rentals here for, concert goers and guests to be able to have a cool place to stay. And so, our rates were much higher. Our occupancy was much higher than we ever expected. And so we just got this confirmation that if you build something cool and unique and you give people a great experience, that they'll come. And so that gave us the confidence to go ahead and step in because, there's a lot of investment in time and money to get a project through entitlements and developments and design, all of that.
What were you expecting that timeline to be versus what it ended up being?
Look, we've done a lot of projects, and when you come into any project, especially in Colorado, you just have to have a long-term mindset of, is this worth doing? Because it's going to be a lot of work. And so you got to answer that question first. And if it's not, you shouldn't waste your time. And if it is, then you got to come in and say, okay, we're going to, set ourselves in this position to where we're not going to be, financially harmed, for carrying costs as well as, any other parties involved. And you just set in for the long term to do the right thing. So we've done similar size projects that we've gotten through in 6 months. We've done similar size projects that take 2-3 years. And sometimes that's what it takes. And so, were we surprised it took that long? A little bit, but like you kind of come in and you hope for the best, but you plan for the worst.
Right.
So, this could have been a 6-month, get through that entitlements, then start our building permits. That could have taken another year. I think our building permits have gone a little faster than what we expected. So we submitted building permits in August and just did our second round of comment response. We only had one comment, so we expect probably by the end of this month that we'll have building permit approval on it. So,
Nice.
give and take a little bit.
Yeah, nice. That makes sense. What type of upside are you anticipating for a development deal like this? And I ask because there's a property that I'm looking at. You and I can touch base on it after this. I'm interested in your thoughts on it. But basically, the value add is in developing new units. And so when I calculated the returns actually look really good. It's about a 22-23% IRR with some pretty solid cash flow. I think the cash flow is like 16%, which is solid considering the IRR on it. And so I'm looking at this deal and it seems pretty good. But then when I'm factoring in that it's going to need new units developed on it, I wonder, okay, should I be going for something juicier? And it's already been approved. It has all the permits and everything else. So I'm interested when you're looking at a piece of dirt and it does need, that 6 to 24 month lead time to actually get things approved. What type of return are you looking for? And what are your leading metrics that you're looking for to qualify the deal?
So for us, we look for something that was a really unique space on the backside and that can demand a higher average daily rate than, what you might typically see. New construction is fairly expensive when you're comparing this to, maybe existing, small boutique hotels that have been owned and operated, maybe need a little, love. So the downside is you're going to be paying more per square foot to build than you would probably buying a similar structure on the market. But if it's in a unique location that, has the ability to produce a higher demand, then maybe you can create that. And so, I don't know if we have like one leading metric. We would just start to run through a pro forma and look at, okay, what does this have to potential to produce? Obviously with boutique hotels, you're working off of a cap rate. And so, if you can project a high NOI and you can create some value by going through that construction, then you've got the ability to pick something up, walk it through the process, add value through both the entitlements, development, new construction. And then theoretically, if that pencils out, then you should be, walking through a project that's, maybe someone else couldn't just come in and add good management or marketing, but it's a unique ability to be able to add value by creating something that wasn't there before. And so, when I'm looking at a project, I'm always just kind of looking at what are the potential opportunities to create something that's unique, add additional value by building. And then, in the same metrics, it's got to be able to, if you're going to bring in investors, usually that 20% IRR is kind of where we found like the project needed to hit.
Okay.
And so we did a lot of push and pull. We added units, we took away units to make sure that at the end of the day, that if we're going to bring it out and we're going to raise capital on it, that it's going to be worth our investors' timeline as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for anybody who's listening and they have this perfect plot of land and they really want to build something, what would you recommend, and assuming they're not architects, what would you recommend their first steps are in terms of basically actions that they take?
Yeah, so we always call it a feasibility study. What we'll do in that, we'll do an initial site plan overlay of what are the potential allowable uses on that property. So I don't know what you're looking at, but if it's an existing structure, that's probably simple enough to say here's what that's already operating at, and then we can start to take a look at the remaining site and say, okay, do we have the ability to add on additional units, go up vertically, increase density, whatever it may be. And so usually that's kind of a brainstorming intake of what are your ideas that you see on that property. And then we'll look over on that site and say, what does the zoning allow? start to look at, maybe there's a density ratio, maybe there's setbacks, and do an initial concept plan that gives a allowed, proposed additional use. You got to start to work backwards from that to a pro forma. So you would probably at the next point look at, kind of a price per square foot or a price per key of similar projects to build. And then, does that pencil out for what you can get on a back end for rental revenue? So that feasibility study, can be done kind of fairly high level, where you're not designing out a project completely, but you're looking at mass and allowed use, and you're getting those at least high enough concepts to start working out a pro forma first. Once you've got that feasibility study with maybe a new site plan, and you've kind of set the metrics to say, okay, here's other similar projects that we're going to design to and head out, then you could start to, rough out a construction budget, rough out what your architecture and engineering costs might be, and then make a plan, to get to the end of the project. So that's kind of step one, an analysis of a new site. Most good architects could help you through that feasibility study that have some experience in this.
Nice. Okay. So if someone's listening and they don't have any experience in the space, but they have a piece of dirt, because this is shockingly a leading message that I get from people, is they'll reach out to me and say, oh, I've either got this dilapidated property or I've got a plot of land and I have this vision. It would make a great venue. Somebody messaged me the other day about this, what they think would be, I think it was formerly like a chemical plant. They were like, this would be a fantastic venue. Would you be interested in this? So it sounds like the best first step for somebody who doesn't have connections and experience would be to find an architectural firm like yours and say, hey, can you help me with the feasibility study? And then would you lay that out for somebody and then also include a package of what designing that would be?
Yeah. So we went through this. My business partner, he owns a coffee farm in the Dominican Republic. And so, it's a big empty 250 acre land. It's got, different coffee plantations. They have one tree house operating on the site. And we begin to brainstorm and say, okay, what could this be? Really just that creative process of, okay, well, let's look at other, coffee farms around the world. What have they done to create some ecotourism and unique stays? Let's, pull in some inspiration images of other cool type units that could be. How about this location, has great opportunity for maybe selling out some additional lots that could help pay for and capitalize the projects. And so, we just went through, walked the land, talked about ideas, kind of came up with a master plan of what that could be, and then went back to the drawing board, put together a master plan of that, laid out roads, laid out, where we would have different unit types. And then when we had the architectural feasibility study done, we begin to attach some construction numbers, some things that we have experience in or local contractors would. What we didn't have as much experience in would be, what would the rental rates be in this area? It's not an area that already has a lot of additional comps. And so we worked with another company that specializes in glamp site feasibility studies, and they do the financial analysis. So we kind of handed over the architectural site plan feasibility. So there's kind of one feasibility study that's, hey, here's what we want to do here. And then there's one feasibility study that other groups will do financial feasibility studies and pull in comps and help put together, that business plan and pro forma. And so before we got involved in the Red Hotel, that was a really good educational process. They helped us pull together additional comps. And depending on your type of project, you may have local comps that you can pull, revenues from. On the uniqueness of a project like that, we had to look outside in kind of a larger circle, both in the Dominican Republic and in other countries, to say, okay, what are other similar sites where you're kind of creating that destination, producing in terms of revenue? From that, then we put together a business plan, came up with a strategy to start moving a master plan forward. And that one's been ongoing. We just got approval for the master plan on that. But I think each project's a little unique. You got to figure out, all right, who are the members that, you may have enough in-house to be able to do that, or maybe you have to reach out and create, a team to help put those unique pieces together.
That's so sick. Wait, so how's that Dominican Republic coffee farm project coming along?
So it's been another kind of long project going through the master plan. Approvals for the master plan just got done this last month. About 6 months ago, it got tied up in kind of small town politics in the third world in Dominican Republic, where, it basically, we did everything that was requested, did the environmental studies. And for that city planning approval, they wanted a bribe on the side to let it through. And, my partner, he's had a long enough vested interest in that community that he's like, yeah, I'm just not going to support that. And, we're going to figure out how to do that right. So he spent a lot of time, doing some politics and making sure that whatever he was going to do there wasn't going to be under the table. So that took a little extra time. And, he's got good relationships, was able to get that worked out.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. My buddy and I, we went down to Dominican Republic. This was years ago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. Absolutely incredible experience. We rented dirt bikes, we're ripping around. We went to Cabarete, I think is the name of the town in the north, and a phenomenal experience, like ripping dirt bikes through like their rainforest tropical vibes and stuff like that. We were out there for, I want to say, a few weeks. And there was one night we went out. There were all these like restaurants and bars, absolutely gorgeous along the beach. And we were out at one night. And the next day, my buddy realized he lost his wallet. So we went hopping around talking to the different restaurateurs and bars, asking where his wallet was, if it had been found. And we ended up splitting up, and we both had these walkie-talkies because our phones didn't work over there. So we had these walkie-talkies, and we split up, and we're looking for it. And I'm walking down the sidewalk, and the guy who we rented the dirt bikes from runs up to me holding up my friend's ID saying, "Hey, is this your friend?" And I was like, "Yeah, where's the rest of it?" And so he takes me back and he's like, "Oh, you have to talk to this police officer." The police officer is like chilling on the beach in a hammock and like not wearing any shoes, but wearing the officer uniform. And he's like, "Hey, you need to go find the wallet of like this person's friend." And so he says, okay, he rolls out of the hammock and he walks me down to this super rough, like it seemed like a very rough area. Like I stood out like a sore thumb, and it started crossing my mind, like, should I actually be here? Was this a terrible decision? What am I doing here? Going deeper and deeper into this rough area. He knocks on the door and it's opened by this guy who's wearing like a wife beater, and I guess he was another cop. And then he's with this lady who I recognized from the bar the night before. So then they're speaking Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I can pick up some of it. He ends up pointing me into the direction, and but before he like gives me a couple credit cards. So like as I'm meeting these different people, we're like piecing the wallet back together. Yeah. Ends up this guy on the wife beater takes me down to this other guy down at the cop station, and we walk in and the cop is there and he says, "Oh, I have the rest of the wallet, but it was a lot of work to find this." And so so just letting you know. And I was like, okay, that's kind of like a weird way of framing it. And then he puts the wallet down, and then they're speaking Spanish back and forth. And the other guy says like, "Oh, he thinks he put a lot of work in, so it'd be good to get like to show some appreciation for pulling it all together." And then my buddy and I realized that they were looking for some cash. So my buddy pulled out his wallet, and they're like, whoa, no, not in here, not in here. So they walk us back to this back room and pulls out the cash and puts it on the table, and then he swaps and then shakes our hands. And then from then on, the rest of the trip, they acted like we were best friends. Like all the cops along this strip, every time they saw us, they were like, "Hey, what's up?" They would grab drinks with us, like grabbing beers on the job, just chilling and chatting in Spanish. Like you would have thought we were legitimately like the best friends in the world. It was the wildest experience. Come to find out that there were girls at this bar that would dance with guys, and my buddy just thought he was like really popular, that these girls were wanting to dance with him, and they ended up pickpocketing him. So when we went to that same bar later on and the girls started dancing on him, he was like, whoa, I'm not interested in this. But then we started looking out for it and actually noticed these girls that were like pickpocketing these guys. And it was wild, man. Totally different world. I will say though, one of the most incredible places, if you're mindful. Everybody there is super nice. Yes. But just being mindful of the environment and knowing what you're walking into, it was an incredible time.
Yeah, it's a great country, really good people. So we actually have half of our staff for root architecture is in the Dominican Republic. And so on a daily basis, we're on Zoom calls with our guys down there. Chad, who's our business partner on the Red Hotel, he spent 20 years down there. And I thought, okay, that's probably enough, because I love the adventure. I love, going to, Latin America and different countries. And I don't speak Spanish, let's put our foot out and see if we can do some hospitality development down there. And I think you can enjoy the travel, enjoy the visit, but you really just have to be very careful. And I just began to kind of realize I could invest here and travel and enjoy going down there. We could have our team down there and probably have a little less risk, in some of our first projects than being deeply invested. So, we're continuing the design down there. Chad will probably continue to, build that out. And then, we've put our, investment focus here locally with what I've got a little bit better control. And, not to say that like bribes, sometimes I, deal with enough building officials. Like I almost wish we would adopt the bribe system to get things through. It's like, at some point it's like, just, let it through the door might be easier. You end up paying it one way or the other. So, no judgment, but just not a system I'm as familiar with of when to give the bribe. You step out of the bar. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, that's hilarious. I have a buddy who's Brazilian. He's a jiu-jitsu instructor. Okay. And they leased out a spot and they were going to do some renovations. And I talked to him. This was also a couple years ago when they were doing the reno. And he was livid one day. And I was like, bro, what's going on? And he was like, these contractors, like, we keep pausing, waiting for permits. He was like, this would only cost me an extra $1,000 in Brazil and this would be done. He was like, the fact that it's not actually being pushed through is ridiculous. And he was so fed up that nobody would take any bribes in the States. So, I mean, it definitely has its trade-offs. Yeah, I'm not proposing or a proponent of bribes, but yeah, it is funny, like culturally, that dichotomy and people being like, what the freaking heck? How do you guys operate over here?
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Bro, so tell me, what was it like to build up the architectural firm and to get clients as someone who was newer in the space? Like, did you start working at a firm and then you split off and did your own thing, or did you dive straight into building your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I did go through kind of the traditional route. I grew up in a family of builders, and architects were looked at as hey, they have kind of figured out, and you won't have to be this blue collar thing all your life. I went through got out, did the grad school, did the undergrad, came up here to Colorado, and then started working for architecture firms, and found out real quickly, like, you get moved back to the bottom of the barrel, and learning how to swing a hammer and actually make things is not such a bad gig. You have to definitely pay your dues to work your way through becoming an architect and building out a firm. And so I worked for, as an intern with a handful of local architects, pretty good ones up here. And then in 2008, when the recession hit and everything just went to a grinding stop, like we were working on some, actually a high-rise hotel and a big mixed-use development down in Colorado Springs. And just like overnight, all of that stopped. And I had at that time a 9-month pregnant wife, and I was probably the hardest working intern. And I got called in and said, hey, we're letting everybody go. Thanks for all your help. Here's a 2-week check. And so that was, just like groundbreaking to me of like, man, I put everything, I was like the hardest worker. And it just really realized like, hey, you can't put the control of, your destiny and really, the ability to be able to take care of your family in any job. You really need to have control of that. And so, that began kind of my pursuit of like, okay, I need to figure out how to run my own thing, whether that's real estate or architecture. And I began to pursue really heavily, how to get into real estate development, begin interviewing guys that were doing it, taking guys out to lunch and just asking like, how are these deals put together? And kind of got some developers that pulled me under their wing a little bit, gave me a little bit of instructions. I was able to pick up another architecture job and keep the bills paid, but kind of all along read Rich Dad Poor Dad and began to figure out how to get into real estate at that point. And so my goal was to launch my own company. And when I got enough relationships by just reaching out and building these relationships with developers there, I felt like I had some work lined up that I could jump ship. I thought I would start as a developer. I named the company Root Architecture and Development, thinking that we would start building our own projects. But what these developers, when I would pitch a project to them, a few of them came back and said, well, we're not ready to invest in you, but we've got other projects that are coming along. If you're interested in designing and building these, then we'll work with you on that. And so that was enough of like seed projects to begin to step out. And so I kind of just slowly transitioned from being an employee to I kept some of those employees as begin to do subcontract work for them, just moved from a W-2 to a 1099. So I had some work in that area. And then I began to help design and build projects. And so kind of came back to that builder route. And I would design a project and build it just kind of one at a time till we got enough underneath our belt. We began to get a reputation as a good designer. People began to reach out to us off the project signs. And it was just slowly kind of one at a time. You do a good job. Someone recognizes that project sold well. They've reached out. You build the next relationship. I joined a group called Architecture Marketing Academy at some point during that and really learned like sales is not a dirty word, but if you're going to get into business, sales and marketing solves a lot of problems. And so just began to learn a little bit about how to market yourself, how to put your name out there, build a brand, and then really stand behind that brand as you're building it out. And so it took some time. Sometimes it looked like designing our own and building projects, and then kind of transitioned into just designing projects. And then during the course, we did a little bit of some development to kind of fill the gap as you start hiring team members. It was a nice way to, if we had a slowdown on architecture work, I could put them on some of our projects. So we try to keep a project a year going that is internal. And if we're slow on fee-based work, then we'll shift our team members now over to our development-based work and kind of keep them going. That's a longer term investment and payoff, is to develop your own projects. But, it's a resource that we can kind of utilize to get into deals and create our own equity long-term that way and keep our staff members moving.
I like that. Yeah, something that people don't utilize often enough is what you mentioned before of actually sitting down and grabbing a bite with people and saying, how did you do this? I always reference this. I have a buddy who acquired over 200 units within 2 years using creative financing, and his primary strategy was he would call up, he was in multifamily, he would call up multifamily owners that had assets that fit his buy box, and he would say, hey, I'm new in the space, I'm trying to enter it. Would you be willing to grab coffee sometime? And I'd love to hear your story of how you got in the game and how you think about things. And he set the goal of sitting down over coffee with one person each week, and over time ended up getting significant deal flow from those property owners, because of course when an asset is up for sale, like the people who are embedded in the space know about it. And so when something would come online that would fit my friend's buy box, they would reach out and help him structure the deal and everything else. And it's such a beautiful example of, like, this is one of the most important lessons I've ever learned in my life, which is you win when the right people want you to win. Like, if there are people who are in the space who are already successful and they want you to win, it 1000x increases your odds of success. That's how I got into tech successfully. That's how I got into commercial real estate successfully, is reaching out to people who were strongly established in the space, who had insane track records and reputations and experience, in aligning incentives and building rapport with them such that they wanted me to win. And that's when things started shifting and moving, because they have everything that you need. Like, at the end of the day, it's not what you know or who you know, but who knows you. So what reputation are you building? What relationships are you building? And what people want you to win, because when the right people want you to win is when it shifts everything.
The whole world of digital marketing and podcasts and social media, to me, it's important behind the scenes of, hey, we're putting out what we're doing, but 100% of our deal flow and our projects and relationships come from one-on-one press and flesh and getting to know people. And so when you sit down with someone and they're going to, in today's day, kind of check you out and see what you've got, up on social media platforms. But people do deals with people they know, like, and trust. And I think it's a huge mistake to just invest in the digital world and forget, like, hey, there's a real world out here where we're actually, still building things. We're, getting to know each other and building that one-on-one relationship. I mean, networking is just kind of a contact sport. You got to, sit down, get to know people, see what they're looking for. We started adding real estate to our offerings maybe 8-9 years ago, something like that. And one of the things I'd always just do is find out, all right, what are you looking for, and how can we help you find projects that work for you, and get an understanding of what type of project, what type of area that you're interested in offering real estate. We could then, not wait for a project to come to us, but we could find deals and see deals and say, hey, you mentioned, you're looking in this area, I ran across this and, thought this might fit what you're looking for. Hey, can we help you out? Sent you a text over this weekend, you kind of saw that. It's like, hey, I'm always just kind of thinking, all right, what are the things that might fit our different relationships, and how can we bring value? Sometimes it's that way. It's helping find deals. Sometimes it's helping analyze. All right, I've got this. I don't know what to do with it. And my phone's ringing all day long of, hey, Zeke, I've got this, warehouse it's in this Stones Districts. What can we do? And just trying to help through those initial problem solving so that developers, builders, even homeowners, they're creating projects. And if, rather than looking at them as they often get the rep as like the money gourders, and, I kind of see developers as myself, like, hey, they're the ones actually creating things. And so how do you help and support so that they can create things that are great for our cities, create housing, are beautiful, solve problems for, issues that we have, and support that along the way. And so adding real estate was a big component to doing that. How we do architecture and how we serve clients, getting our feet wet and doing our own development so we kind of understand some of those pain points. And then doing the podcasting of late. This has been like a great way to not only kind of add value, talk about what we're doing, but make contact and relationships as well.
Yeah, 100%. I love hearing your story because not a lot of people know this, but I actually almost went into architecture. I took architecture in high school and ended up getting first place in state for like one of those little, like, you design like a little building and
nice
stuff like that.
Heck yeah.
And so I almost went that route. I ended up going an alternative route, of course. But yeah, I deeply considered it. I loved the idea of doing like crazy designs and building these structures. I ended up not doing it because I realized that to do those crazy designs, you need like 30 years of just pain and suffering to prove yourself for someone to actually fund those designs. So I was like, oh, okay, if I can't jump into the creative stuff quicker, I might lose my mind. So I ended up going a different route, but I absolutely love it. I'm fascinated by the space, and I'm making big pushes right now to build more unique stays that are cool, stuff that like stretches my mind and things that I have more creative freedoms with personally. So that's the big thing that I look for now in deals is like, how crazy can we make this? Like, what wild experiences can we provide for people where when they're scrolling, they can't help but stop and say, holy shit, I've never even thought of something like this before. This is outrageous. And then clicking into it and wanting to book it and providing that killer experience for them. So love hearing your story and how you think about things and approach it, because it's super applicable for what my frame of mind is right now.
And look, you're doing it now. Like, as a developer, that's probably the most creative position, where you get to set the vision and the lead,
Right.
and then, work with the team to pull that together. Hospitality, it's definitely my favorite asset, because it's one of these areas that design really does pay off. Like, compared to multifamily even single family developments. Oftentimes one design may not make as big as a dent or an impact on your performance or the sellability of a product as it can in hospitality. If you create something that's really special and unique, it starts trickling down because people will pay more to stay there. As people are paying more to stay there, that's increasing your ADR. If you're building things on a cap rate, that exponentially increases the value. And so if you could start to use that creativity in a way that is making, incredible spaces and creates value, then it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's like, why not leverage that a little bit more?
Yeah, 100% agree. Well, Zeke, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm super stoked to hop on your podcast, the Radical Hospitality Podcast, tomorrow. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can just search Zeke Freeman Root Architecture on most platforms, Instagram. You can definitely come over and see us on our website, therootteam.com. Everything's linked up there. If you have a project that you're dreaming about and looking for some help on figuring out how to make it a reality, hop on. I'm glad to always have a chat. So
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Looking forward to chatting again soon.
awesome. Thanks, Gideon. Appreciate it.